In this unit, we are going to cover deafblindness and its role in cognition, communication, behavior, and socialization. Remember, the child with deafblindness is not a deaf child who cannot see or a blind child who cannot hear. Deafblindness is a unique and complex disability. Characteristics of students with deafblindness may include distorted perception of the world because of lack of non-distorted information from the distant senses, difficulty in communicating or an inability to communicate with people and things in the environment in a meaningful way, extreme difficulty in establishing and maintaining interpersonal relationships with others, and tactile defensiveness. Some additional characteristics of students with deafblindness may include self-stimulation behaviors and discipline problems which may result from sensory deprivation, frustration, confusion, and fear. Severe medical problems and or other handicapping conditions which may lead to serious developmental delays. Delays in motor development, and inconsistent use of whatever vision and hearing is present. Sensory integration must be learned. Students who are deafblind have unique learning styles. Our students cannot benefit from secondary or tertiary learning. He or she must be taught everything firsthand. For typical children, 8% of learning is firsthand, 12% is secondary, and 80% is tertiary. The child may not benefit from group instruction because he or she cannot benefit from watching and learning others. The child is deprived of many of the most basic extrinsic motivations such as curiosity. Sensory information is so distorted that it is ineffective as a source of motivation to explore and interact with the people and environment. The child will not benefit from being left alone for long periods of time with toys. Having a trusting relationship is the most crucial element of success in a student who is deafblind. Trust must be at the core of all interactions and teaching of a student who is deafblind. A student must be able to ask of an educator, "Can I trust you to help me access my world in a way that is clear and complete? Can I trust you to help me move safely between environments? Can I trust you to understand my needs and desires and to respond to me? Can I trust you to teach me the concepts that other kids know?" Deafblindness has a significant impact on concept development. We know that communication is a primary component of concept development. Both skills and concepts must be taught. When we talk about skill, we mean the ability to physically complete a task, a learned power of doing something competently, and a developed aptitude or ability. When we talk about concept, we mean something conceived in the mind, a thought or notion, an abstract or a generic idea generalized from particular experiences, and a mental representation, image, or idea of concrete objects as well as the intangible ideas such as feelings. It is estimated that 75% of what sighted hearing people know about the world is not learned in school. Children with vision and hearing gain information naturally by watching and listening to what is going on around them. They learn concepts, how to communicate, how to interact with others, how the environment is organized, and how to move about. When academic curricula are developed, it is with the assumption that students have acquired many concepts and language abilities before they enter school. For students who are deafblind to acquire the basic concepts and skills that other students learn by exploring, watching, and overhearing, they should be fully immersed in real-life activities and provided with conversation and language to help them understand the world. We must start out by starting with concrete concepts, moving to semi-concrete concepts, and then finally abstract concepts. Children learn that objects exist, that objects have permanence, that objects differ from one another. They label or name objects, they identify the characteristics of the objects, and then the function of an object. When thinking about strategies for concept development, remember to use activities which are meaningful to the child. Use activities that the child enjoys. Attach language to all efforts to teach skills. Build on a language that is known to the child. Use of a total communication approach. Remove variables and generalize the concepts to a variety of situations. When we talk about one-on-one interaction, it needs to be with a staff member who knows the child and has a trusting relationship with that child. It doesn't necessarily need to be the same adult at all times, but the purpose of that adult is to explain the environment and what is going on around in the environment, because students who are deafblind do not have access to that incidental learning. It also minimizes the effects of multisensory deprivation and enables the students to develop maximum control over his or her life at the appropriate level at his or her age. The staff's role in working with the student is to provide Interaction and learning which is conducted within the framework of natural routines. Constant one-on-one interaction which provides consistent, non-distorted information. And communication which will let the child know what is going on before it happens, what is happening while it happens, and what has happened after it has happened. Strategies to promote the development of both an expressive and receptive system of communication for the child means motivation to explore and reach out and try things, and enough support so that the child can be successful in a reasonable amount of time and know that he or she is successful. The adult also provides skills and techniques to enhance a child-specific program which will stress the following: the development and reward to curiosity, the development of exploratory techniques, ways to help the child anticipate coming routines, procedures and activities that require the child to make choices, skill development in the areas of motor, self-help, orientation and mobility, communication, etc., strategies to promote the use of residual vision and hearing, techniques to promote sensory integration. There are many different types of communication methods: speech, sign language, fingerspelling, writing, and gestures. It's also important to remember that the following are also ways of communication. Many teachers perceive these as behaviors when in fact it's communication: facial expressions, body movement, posture, vocalization, crying, and tantrums. It's important to analyze all of the student's behaviors and consider them attempts to communicate. Be sure the student has had medical problems eliminated and the reason for the behavior isn't medically related. Attempt to understand the student's communication effort and then teach the student a more acceptable way to communicate what he has to say after showing you understand the effort. The following are communicative intents that you need to consider when looking at a child's communication system or behaviors communication. Was the child trying to protest or reject, make a request, gain attention, direct attention, create social interaction, confirm or deny, or label and comment? Communicative behaviors also work in a hierarchy. Think about if you have kids. They follow this same development. Students will first begin with basic behaviors such as vocalization, simple body movements, and simple actions on people or objects. Students will then progress to conventional behaviors. They will begin to point, raise their hand or wave, extend their hand, and nod and shake their head yes or no. We finish with symbolic behaviors. Students will use object symbols, picture symbols, manual signs, spoken words, printed letters or words, or even brailled letters or words. When we are looking at the developmental levels of our students who are deafblind, we need to work from a hierarchy of representational forms. So we need to begin with where the child is at and work at that level until they master it and then progress downwards on the slide. So the most basic representational form begins with the real object. When a student can identify with the real object, we will scale back and only use part of that object. From there, we would use colored photos of identical objects, colored photos of non-identical objects, black and white photos of identical objects, line drawings of identical objects, line drawings, stick figures, and circle figures, non-identical objects, and then lastly, formal symbols of language. One of the gurus in deafblind education is Van Dyke. His model of developing communication in students who are deafblind is by using the resonance technique. Using the resonance technique, the teacher joins the child in the movement. The teacher will then stop the action when her presence is sensed. When the child verbally or physically expresses the desire to continue, the teacher will accept the cue and resume the action. Resonance activities encourage the learner to shift self-stimulatory behaviors to behaviors that involve another person's objects. Resonance activities encourage the learner to shift self-stimulatory behaviors to behaviors that involve other persons and objects. The teacher follows and joins in the learner's behavior and begins to lay the foundation for turn-taking interactions. Rapport and trust are developing. You can then move from resonance activities to coactive movement sequence. This is an extension of the resonance strategy where the student demonstrates purposeful signals and there is a sharing of the common movement or action. Coactive manipulation is used sharing hand over hand or hand under hand with the student. So you would place your hand over or under the students and guide them in an activity or communication. Representational reference is the precursor to the formation of symbols. It was at that moment when Helen Keller understood when she put her hand under the faucet that the stuff pouring out was water. She made the connection to the word and the item. Distancing is more symbolic in form and ultimately leads to conceptual level of representation. It is important to promote communication in our students who are deafblind. Make sure that you are providing them opportunities for them to communicate with their peers and with staff. Also, make sure to create a communication-rich environment, and don't forget to look at all of the students' behaviors as an attempt to communicate. We are now going to talk about a calendar system. Calendar can be mnemonic for C, being communication, A, anticipation, L, learning, E, expanding content, form, and use, N for interaction, D for dynamic partners, A for availability, and R for representational levels. Calendar systems are not only to be used to tell a student what is going to happen next, but they are also used as a social tool. You can encourage turn-taking and increase the joint attention of your student who is deaf-blind. You can also use it as a form of communication. In the beginning stages, it is used for early vocabulary development and can then be expanded for the use of commenting, labeling, requesting, and rejecting. It also allows the students choice-making opportunities between activities. Additional skills that can be taught using a calendar system are cognitive skills, matching picture to object, resequencing activities at the end of the day, and understanding temporal concepts such as day and week. If you are going to make a change in the student's routine, it is important to develop signals which let the child know what to expect. For example, every time we had a fire drill, we would make the symbol of an X on the back of our student who was deaf-blind. This was her cue that there was a drill and the alarm was going off, so there was a change in her schedule. You can also have the student carry an object to her next activity. You also want to make sure you introduce any new people in her environment. Remember, unless you tell them, they will not know. When we talk about the fairy godmother syndrome, we mean do not do for a child. We want to build their independence and not enable them. The following slides are questions for you to consider when you are working with a student who is deaf-blind. What is the best space, placement, and distance of communication forms for the child related to their visual field? What is the best rate and distance of communication form for the child related to his acuity? Can the student visually discern movements that give meaning to signs? Does the lighting affect a student's ability to visually access information? Does the visual background affect the child's comprehension? Can a student follow signed conversations in group settings? Would the student benefit from supplemental experience to work to assist in understanding the concepts behind signs or spoken word? Is the child's vision such that he would benefit from a technique of coactive signing when learning new signs or speech cues? Remember, coactive signing is hand over hand or hand under hand signing. Does the child initiate or benefit from hand tracking? Does the child initiate or benefit from tactile signing? Does the student need additional environmental information provided to him? If a student will benefit from Braille, are there English acquisition issues associated with students who are deaf and hard of hearing that should be addressed? Are there instructional strategies, materials, and tools typically used with students who are deaf or hard of hearing that may present problems for students with deaf-blindness? Are there modifications to standard interpreting arrangements or signed classroom instruction that may need to be addressed? Does the student have skills to advocate for the modifications he needs? The definition of coactive signing is the physical guidance of the child's hands to facilitate production of a standard manual sign for expressive communication. Coactive signing involves taking a child's hands and in a respectful way molding the child's hands through the signs so that you are helping the child make the signs. The definition of tactile signing is a communication method based on a standard manual sign system in which the receiver's hands are placed lightly upon the hands of the signer to perceive the signs. Tactile signing is used when the person places his or her hands under the child's hands to express something to the child. Teachers who work with students who are deafblind should be competent and confident they have the knowledge in the following 8 areas: deafblindness, personal identity, relationships, and self-esteem, concept development, communication, hearing and vision, orientation and mobility, environment and materials, and professional issues. As a teacher, you should also be able to provide the following to your students who are deafblind: an opportunity for the student to develop a secure and positive relationship, promote their sense of self, provide an appropriate environment, provide extensive experiences, promote the use of all available senses. Provide anticipatory information, teach functional activities, Be consistent, provide opportunities for making choices and problem solving, and most importantly, make it routine. Remember, making the appropriate modifications and adaptations for a child with deafblindness is critical to their educational achievement. If his unique needs are not met, the child, no matter where he is placed, is in the most restrictive environment. He is cut off from any opportunity to learn. Unfortunately, these supports are not always easy or inexpensive to provide.